Stop. Put down the latte. You've seen the paintings. The serene guy in the clean white robe holding a fluffy lamb. Forget him. He's a liar. Real first-century shepherding? It's 26 AD in the Judean wilderness. The air smells like scorched limestone and the rancid, greasy lanolin of 300 unwashed ewes. Your sandals, thin leather scraps held by twine, just snapped. Again. You haven't slept in 40 hours because something with yellow eyes has been pacing the perimeter of the scrub brush. Your throat feels like you swallowed a handful of dry sand. You're 19, you look 40, and you're currently picking a tick out of your thigh with a sharpened flint. Think you're tough? You'd be dead by Tuesday, or Monday night if the hyenas get bored. Look at the ground. Really look. It's not dirt. It's flint-sharp limestone that eats through leather like acid. Your feet are a map of scars and half-healed infections. Why? Because a shepherd who can't walk is just a buffet for the jackals. Let's get the hierarchy straight. You're at the bottom, below the tax collectors, below the guys who sweep the temple floors. You're a social pariah living in a tent made of matted goat hair that leaks when it rains and bakes like an oven when it doesn't. You eat parched grain and maybe a dried fig if you're lucky. Bread? Only if you brought some that hasn't turned into a brick yet. And the water, my God, the water. You're dreaming of a cold stream, aren't you? Forget it. You're drinking from cisterns, basically holes in the rock filled with stagnant rainwater, dead bugs, and probably a drowned lizard or two. You have to strain it through your teeth. It tastes like copper and despair. Actually, let me check my notes. Yeah, it's 26 AD. Pontius Pilate just showed up in Judea. The air is tense. Politics in Jerusalem are screaming, but out here, the only law is gravity and teeth. You're out here because sheep are stupid. Let's be blunt. They're fluffy idiots with a death wish. They'll walk straight into a thicket of thorns because they saw a singular green leaf. Then you have to go in there. No gloves, just your bare, bleeding hands and a wooden crook. You're doing this for what? A few copper coins a year? A place to sleep that isn't a pile of rocks? Wait, I forgot the smell. It's not just sheep. It's the soont. That's the sheep's sweat, the raw, oily lanolin. It's sticky. It's everywhere. It coats your hands until your fingers feel like they're glued together with old earwax. You haven't bathed in, what, 3 weeks? Your mother wouldn't recognize you. The Pharisees? They won't even touch you. You're unclean, ritually filthy. You can't even testify in a court of law because everyone assumes a shepherd is a born thief. Great career choice. You've got a sling, not a David and Goliath silk masterpiece. It's a rough cord of goat hair. Your hands are blistered from practicing. If you miss, the ewe wanders off a cliff. If you hit too hard, you've just killed your boss's investment. Pressure. It's constant. The silence is the worst part, though. It's heavy. It presses on your ears until you start talking to the goats. And they don't talk back. They just stare with those horizontal pupils. Creepy. Just you, the flies, and the realization that nobody is coming to save you if you trip. The sun doesn't just set in the Judean wilderness. It surrenders. 1 minute you're being baked alive, your skin turning into something resembling a cheap leather pouch, and the next, the temperature drops like a stone off a cliff. It's a physical blow. You're shivering in a tunic that's more holes than fabric. You have no tent, no sleeping bag, Just a heavy wool cloak, your simla, which is the only thing standing between you and hypothermia. It smells like a wet dog that died 3 days ago. And then comes the sound. You think you know what quiet is? You don't. Not until you're sitting on a limestone ridge 3 miles from the nearest human soul. It's so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat, a dull thud in your ears that feels way too fast. Then, the first yip. Then a howl. Jackals. They don't sound like the majestic wolves in the movies. They sound like hysterical children laughing in the dark. It's high-pitched, mocking, and it's getting closer. You've got to gather the flock. Now, you aren't using a whistle. You're using your voice, a series of guttural clicks and low grunts they recognize. If you panic, they panic. If they panic, they run. And if 50 sheep decide to bolt into the darkness of a wadi in 26 AD, you're not a shepherd anymore. You're a dead man walking. Because those sheep, they aren't yours. They belong to a local landlord or a wealthy family in Bethlehem. And if you lose even one ewe to a crevice or a hyena, that's your wages for the next 6 months gone. Or worse, you might owe them your freedom. Debt slavery is a very real thing, and it's a lot more common than those Sunday school illustrations suggest. Wait, I need to tell you about the staff. Everyone loves the shepherd's crook imagery. Very poetic. In reality, you've got 2 pieces of wood. There's the mishnah, the staff. It's tall. It helps you walk. It hooks the sheep by the neck when they try to jump off a ledge because they saw a shiny pebble. But the other one, the shebet, that's the rod. It's shorter, heavy, and usually has a knob of wood or even bits of iron embedded at the end. It's not for guidance. It's for crushing skulls. You keep it tucked into your belt, and your hand never leaves it. Because the jackals aren't the problem. It's the Syrian brown bears, or the lions. Yeah, you heard me. Lions in Israel. People forget that. The Asiatic lion didn't go extinct in this region until the Middle Ages. In the 1st century, they're very much a part of the job description. They're smaller than the African ones, but they're just as hungry. When a lion decides it wants a lamb, it doesn't announce itself. It's just a shadow that moves slightly faster than the other shadows. You're standing there, shivering, holding a piece of wood, looking into the pitch-black mouth of a ravine. Your only light is a tiny, sputtering fire of dried thorn bushes and dung. It gives off more smoke than heat. It stings your eyes. You're squinting, trying to see if that pair of yellow orbs 50 yards away is just a trick of the light, or a 300-pound cat deciding if you're worth the effort. Hey, if you're actually enjoying this nightmare, and let's be honest, you're glad you're sitting in a chair with a screen and not in a Judean ditch, hit the subscribe button. Diary of Rhodes is all about the grit they leave out of the history books. Subscribe, or I'll send a 1st century hyena to your house. Not really. Maybe. Anyway, back to the lions. The adrenaline is the only thing keeping you awake. You haven't slept more than 4 hours at a time in a week. You've got watch rotations if you're lucky enough to be with other shepherds, but usually it's just you and a dog. And 1st century dogs aren't golden retrievers. They're semi-feral, scarred-up mutts that would just as soon bite you as look at you. They're there to bark and die so you have 5 extra seconds to swing your sling. Speaking of the sling, let's talk about the physics of it. You've been practicing since you were 6. You have to. If you can't hit a moving target at 50 paces with a smooth river stone, you're basically a buffet. You don't just throw it. You whirl it until the air whistles, a specific, terrifying vroom, vroom, vroom sound. When you release, that stone is traveling at nearly 100 miles per hour. It doesn't just bruise, it shatters bone. It's the only long-range firearm you have. But it's dark. You're tired. Your hands are cracked and bleeding from the cold. Good luck. And then there's the fold. Sometimes you find a natural cave. Great, right? Wrong. Caves are damp. They smell like centuries of accumulated manure, and they're the favorite hiding spots for scorpions. The Buthus judaicus, the Hottentotta, big, black, and incredibly pissed off. You have to sweep the floor with your staff, praying you don't feel that sharp electric sting on your ankle. If you get stung out here, there's no hospital, no anti-venom. You just lie there in the dirt, sweating and hallucinating about your mother's cooking while your heart tries to explode. Actually, let's talk about your feet. We don't talk about feet enough. You're wearing sandals made of a single piece of dried cowhide strapped with leather thongs. There's no arch support. There's no moisture-wicking anything. The dust of the Judean hills is alkaline. It eats at your skin. Your heels are cracked so deeply they bleed, and the blood mixes with the dust to create a kind of organic cement. Every step is a reminder that you are at the bottom of the social ladder. You're an outcast, literally, because you're constantly around dead animals, blood, and unclean things. You can't go to the temple. You're a religious pariah. The guys in the fancy robes in Jerusalem look at you like you're the dirt on their boots. They need your sheep for the sacrifices, sure, but they don't want you. You're the guy who does the dirty work so they can stay holy. It's a lonely, bitter existence. You're 19 years old and you feel 50. Your teeth ache because you've been chewing on parched grain and dried figs that are mostly grit. Wait, I think I heard something. There, behind the rocks. It's not a lion, it's worse. It's 3 men, bandits. They aren't looking for a sheep. They're looking for a whole flock to drive over the border into Perea or Nabatea. They have rusted iron daggers and they haven't eaten in 2 days. They don't care about your life. To them, you're just a hurdle. This is the part they don't put in the carols. The violence. You aren't just a herder. You're a private security guard for a bunch of 4-legged idiots in a land with no police. You stand up, your knees cracking like dry kindling. You grip the shebet. You reach for a stone. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. You're tired, you're thirsty, and you're covered in sheep grease. This isn't a job. It's a war of attrition, and the week has only just begun. Dust. It's in your lungs. One of the bandits, the one with the scarred lip and the smell of rancid leek, lunges. You don't think. You can't. Thinking is a luxury for people with soft beds and 3 meals a day. You swing the shebet, that heavy oak club, and it hits his shoulder with a wet thwack. He howls. It's a sound like a dying dog. But there's 2 more. Your sling. It's tucked into your belt. It's just 2 strips of leather and a pouch, but in your hands, it's a projectile weapon. You fumble for a stone, not just any stone. You need a smooth river pebble, but you're in the parched hills, so you grab a jagged piece of flint. It's cold, it's sharp, it slices your thumb. Whatever. Whirl, whirl, release. The stone whistles, a low, haunting hum. It misses the second guy's head by an inch and cracks against a limestone boulder. The sound echoes through the ravine like a gunshot. They hesitate, just for a second. That second is the only reason you're still breathing. You're screaming now, not a war cry, a pathetic, high-pitched wail of pure, unadulterated terror. You're maybe 110 pounds of malnutrition and desperation. You charge. Why? Because if you lose these sheep, you're dead anyway. Your master back in the village will see to that. Or you'll just starve in a gutter in Jericho. It's a chaotic blur of limbs and the smell of old sweat. You take a fist to the jaw, your vision swims. Tastes like copper, blood. You swing the club again, blind, wild. You catch a shin, a crack, another scream. They didn't expect a fight. They expected a victim. They back off. They're cursing in a dialect you barely understand, spitting on the ground, retreating into the long, purple shadows of the wadi. They're dragging their limping friend. Silence. Then the sheep start bleating again. Stupid things. They didn't even move. They just watched you almost get murdered like it was a theater performance. You're shaking so hard your knees hit each other. You look at your hands. They're stained with dirt and the bandit's blood, and you realize, wait, did I actually break his leg? I think I did. I feel sick. God, my head hurts. The adrenaline is draining out, leaving me feeling like an empty wineskin. And it's only Tuesday. Or Wednesday? I've lost track. Night is coming, and I still haven't found a water hole that isn't a stagnant puddle of parasite water. Welcome to the job. You still want the robe and the staff? Didn't think so. Look at your hands. Clean. No calluses from jagged flint, no traces of sheep dung under the nails. You're lucky. This was just a week in your head, but for them, it was 40 years of dust and loneliness until a lung infection or a wolf finally finished the job. I'm done with the sheep. My throat feels like I swallowed a handful of dry silt. So, what's next? What other ancient nightmare do you want me to drag you through? Galley slaves? Copper miners in the Sinai? Hit the comments. If you actually enjoyed this misery, subscribe to the diary. Or don't. Your call. I'm going to go find some wine that doesn't taste like vinegar. Stay gritty.